Scissors and shears, unarguably one of the most popular tools in the world. Look at this amazing set of Wiss Taylor's shears made in the early 1900s. They are still coveted today as some of the finest shears you can get. Right on, folks. John Crane here in my shop, and today I invite you to come on a little journey with me as we explore the history of Wiss scissors and shears. And we're also going to get to the bottom of what the difference is between scissors and shears. Steam locomotives, the sewing machine, the Morse telegraph. The 1840s was a time of invention and a time of turmoil in Europe. Many an entrepreneur would travel to the New World in a quest to fulfill their dreams. Jacob Wiss was one such adventurer. Born and raised in Switzerland, a cutler and gunsmith by trade, young Jacob Wiss made his journey across the Atlantic and would settle in Newark, New Jersey. Now, Newark was a bustling hub of idea and industry. There he would take up employment with one of the finest makers of shears in the U.S., Rokas Heinisch, an Austrian cutler who had perfected the process of facing shears with a hardened crucible steel, providing a durable, sharp cutting edge. Heinisch had been working for years with the great foundryman Seth Boyden to achieve such a task. Now, the great foundryman Seth Boyden, he had created his own form of malleable cast iron. This was a really tough material. It was easily machined and it had a little bit of give to it. Now, if you dropped your pair of scissors, they weren't just going to shatter on the floor. Now, this welding of a hardened crucible steel to cast iron was groundbreaking. And Jacob Wiss, he took note. Now, he was an entrepreneur at heart, and so he worked with Heinisch and Boyden for a year to learn the craft, and then he set out on his own. He looked for a place to rent and found a shop on 7 Bank Street in Newark. Advertising shears, scissors, razors, and knives, Jacob Wiss became a name associated with some of the best tools that money could buy. Now, when Jacob Wiss started his business down on 7 Bank Street, the guy was incredibly innovative. He had a big wheel, and it had a St. Bernard in the middle of this wheel, and this was what was powering the grinding stones and the polishing stones. This was really a grassroots effort. The guy really built himself up from scratch. Now, as he moved down the street to a larger shop as the business is expanding, then he brings in steam engines to power the grinding and the polishing wheels. At this point, he's making all types of different shears and knives and a lot of garden tools, a lot of pruning tools. And at this time, he's also training several employees the craft of fine shear making and knife making. Word of Jacob Wiss's fine shears had spread, and the business rapidly grew, and he moved into larger and larger workshops. Right, he was at 7 Bank Street, and then he moved down the street to a larger shop at 13 Bank Street, and then he outgrew that, and again moves down to 26 Bank Street. You can see how determined and driven Jacob Wiss was to make his product. By the 1860s, Jacob had 2 sons, Frederick and Louis. They were born right into the business and learned the craft from a young age, literally forging their way into the future. By the late 1870s, the young Wiss brothers had been shown the ropes of a successful business by their now ailing father. In 1880, Jacob passes away. Frederick and Louis now changed the company name to J. Wiss and Sons. Now, the quality of the shears that Jacob Wiss was making was unmatched by anyone in the world at this time. The design that he had and the process of welding the shears, even those makers using like Sheffield steel from England, they could not compete with the Wiss shears. They just didn't have the know-how. In 1912, Frederick Wiss and his brother Louis wanted to take it a step further and attempt to drop forge a pair of shears. This had not been done before, and of course most said it couldn't be done. Several attempts were made with the die breaking several times, but the Wiss brothers forged ahead, creating the first pair of drop forge shears. This new line of shears was so strong that they advertised it as having an unbreakable handle. This was a huge improvement from the cast iron handles of old. A tough, break-resistant forged steel frame is the basis of the Wiss steel forge process. This frame will withstand the hardest of strains without breaking. A piece of the finest crucible steel is then welded to this tough frame, giving the cutting surface, which when perfectly tempered, makes it possible for the Wiss steel forge shears to stay sharp longer than any other. These two parts are forged into one, forever one. All right, now what is the difference between scissors and shears? I know this is a little bit of a controversial subject in some circles, but to me, it becomes quite evident once I start looking at the Wiss catalogs and the Wiss literature. It becomes very clear what a pair of scissors is and what a pair of shears is. And I'm going to go with Jacob Wiss on this because it was probably him and Heinisch who came up with these categories in the first place. All right, I have got some scissors and I've got some shears laid out here on the table. And from the Wiss literature, it is saying that scissors are generally 3 inches to 6 inches in length. You can see here we have a 4-inch pair of scissors, and also that the holes are generally the same size for a pair of scissors. So we got all the scissors here on the left side. They are all under 6 inches. On the right side of the table, we have our shears, and shears are generally manufactured from 6 inches in length on up to 16 inches in length. And these are generally for cutting heavy-duty material. Obviously, they're a lot bigger. And you can also see here on the bottom, there is a hole where you can insert your fingers, and a thumb hole at the top. You can get a lot of leverage with a pair of shears like this. So shears, 6 inches on up to 16 inches. This pair of Taylor shears are 13 inches in length. All right, that kind of makes sense that the scissors are on the smaller end of things and shears are on the larger end of things. Sometimes I think of garden shears for pruning bushes. You're snipping those boxwoods. But the same hole size doesn't always add up, because I know there are barber shears that are real long and they have identical size holes. A lot of times they have this little finger lever here on the end. Now, Wiss for many years has also been manufacturing tinner snips, or tin snips as most of us know them, and if you ever used a pair, you know how nice they cut. In 1939, they came out with a great invention, the compound action Metal Master snips. These new snips were revolutionary for aviation manufacturers, air conditioning, and the sheet metal industry. All right, now with this compound leverage cutting, they advertise twice the cutting with half the effort. And I can tell you, as someone who has used these extensively, they do cut with ease. And from what I can tell, they haven't changed much since 1939. Now, Wiss went on for many years, making some of the best tools in the world, a standard set by Jacob Wiss and carried on by his family for generations. In 1976, Wiss was sold to Cooper Tools, and then in 2012, bought out by the Apex Tool Group. Now, you can still buy Wiss scissors and shears today, and some remain similar to what they used to be, and some have changed. Now, they're still good tools, but for me, I really like holding on to a pair of shears like this one here. The first page of their 1901 catalog reads as such. We have had over half a century experience in the manufacture of shears, and our aim has always been and will be to confine ourselves to the making of one grade of shears, the very best. Today, the Wiss brand is the standard the world over. Our policy in the future will be, as in the past, to give our customers fair and liberal treatment and guarantee them absolute satisfaction. All suggestions towards the improvement of our goods will be favorably considered and receive our personal attention. J. Wiss and Sons.